Hey everybody, welcome to Couch Dimension, our video games podcast where we're talking about games and gaming news and examining it through a legal developer and player lens. I'm Tiny Big Dude, joined as always by my co-hosts.
Captain?
And red.
Anyways, we've got a great show for you today. Starting us off with our first story is going to be Red. Red, take it away.
Sure. Magically $400,000 worth of a niche console reappeared about a week or two ago. This story comes from Victoria Kennedy at Eurogamer. She regales us with a flashback from March where the co-founder announced at GDC that $400,000 worth of the Playdate console was stolen. And if you don't know what a Playdate is, it's a goofy kind of retro handheld console that plays entirely unique games. It has a D-pad, A and B buttons, and a crank to crank that Playdate on the side.
Soldier Boy, tell him.
The crank is basically used to perform special mechanics in the black and white games that are available on the console. These games usually sell for less than $10. As an example of the mechanic, turning the crank lets the player climb up or down in the game Summit, a Meat Boy or Celeste comparable game about an ice climber jumping, climbing, and dodging hazards. They were delivered to the wrong address at a construction site and stolen from there. These goofy little things reappeared at a random restaurant about 2 weeks ago. Imagine it wasn't hard to guess, where the thief worked at. And Playdate even joked that they could sell these as a limited edition, maybe. And they alluded to maybe having a podcast episode to explain more, but that the return of the consoles was the best possible outcome for them. Uh, this makes it sound like the company is not going to pursue any charges. Tiny Big Lawyer, would there be anything to pursue here? Some kind of damages due to missed sales that is near impossible to prove since the sales didn't happen.
Yeah, so let's keep this in the realm of civil law. Like, what could, if they hypothetically knew the identity of the thief, what could this company sue the thief for? And it's actually, you've activated my trap card because this harkens back to one of my favorite discussions from my first year of law school. This is a property class discussion, and that is the difference between trespass to chattel and conversion of chattel. So what is chattel? Let's start there. Chattel is anything that isn't land. Anything that is not what we call real property is chattel. Your computer is chattel, your phone is chattel, your car is chattel, etc. So the reason that I find this interesting is because hypothetically speaking, someone could steal your car, drive it around the block before you know it's gone, park it right back where it was, and there wouldn't be shit you could do about it. And that's because trespass to chattel consists of 4 elements. First, intent. And second, to use or intermeddle with the chattel of another and dispose them of their chattel. So basically, you have the intent to use their thing without their permission. That's element 3. And 4, causes harm or destruction to the chattel or causes a substantial interference with the possessor's use of the chattel. So what that means in regular speak is unless they suffered harm or you devalued the object, you don't have anything you can sue them for, right? Now, conversion, on the other hand, that is like you steal something forever or you steal something and destroy it. It is the intent to exercise domain or control over chattel which dispossesses or deprives its owner permanently or indefinitely. So, I say all that to say, because the game units were returned presumably undamaged, you couldn't really sue them unless, as you alluded to, Red, there was a loss of sales. And the way that you would typically calculate that is like, right, how many sales do you normally get? What's your regular sales look like? Now, how was that number impacted by the fact that you didn't have access to the shipment? There's your damages. And then you would be able to sue under that. But yeah, this story just touched on one of my favorite like quirks of law, which is something that it really seems like you shouldn't be able to do. You possibly could. Don't go do that though. There are criminal statutes that prevent you from doing that. Do not.
I might just go
I-
do it.
I have nothing to add on the legal side of things. That was all white noise to me.
I have nothing to add
Uh,
is the best thing to say on a podcast.
I would You know what? I surely wasn't going anywhere.
Michael Q says in chat, it's not stealing if you return it before it's missed. Eugene Krabs. Mr. Krabs was correct. But Captain, you were going to say.
Yes, before you derailed me. I wanted to say that the Playdate has always been a neat interest in me. I've been so close so many times to pulling the trigger on buying one. Problem is, I've always had trouble actually bringing myself around to do so because the value cost analysis is tough, and a lot of the time when I'm reminded they exist is in between jobs, so that's always rough. It's always seemed super neat though, and they've always seemed like pretty chill people. I don't know. I'm glad they got it back. For that shipment back, and yeah, it's generally a good news story.
I like to think what was going through these thieves' heads when they stole the boxes and they're like, okay, this is pretty clearly electronics. What do we get? We got a shipment of phones. Oh man, maybe it's a bunch of game consoles. Maybe it's a bunch of Nintendo Switches. We can really offload these. And then they pull out a Game Boy with a crank, and they're like, "What the fuck?"
What is this?
Which-
It is not a very well marketed system at all.
Yeah, which like it's really easy probably to launder a Switch or an Xbox or whatever. You can just take that shit to GameStop and sell it and no one's the wiser. But when you have $400,000 of play dates, well, that's kind of hot and unique property, isn't it?
I wouldn't
Yes.
really say they're poorly marketed as much as they're a niche product. They're not really aiming for a mainstream market.
I suppose that's true. But considering how small they are, like the games are cheap, which is a good thing for them, but the console is about $200.
Ooh,
Yeah,
buddy, $200.
200
yeah, but
USD.
that's why I think I don't think it's a marketing issue because their whole goal marketing wise is mostly targeting people with disposable income who enjoy video games. Like I think most of the people who are up to buying something like the Playdate are probably mostly aware of the Playdate.
I want to talk about an interesting story that came out of Bloomberg this week. Report from Jason Schreiner. And he broke down really kind of exactly play by play what happened to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I think this story is an excellent case study in how to mismanage your way to a multi-million dollar failure. And I think it holds a lot of insights into the industry and lessons that other companies can learn. So let's get into the development and failure of Suicide Squad. So, first, let's go back to 2015. Suicide Squad, the Will Smith one, not the Suicide Squad, the James Gunn one, had just released. And Warner Brothers wanted to translate some of the movie cash into game cash. So, at the time, Warner Brothers Montreal studio had a Suicide Squad game, and it was struggling to kind of get it on its feet. That project got canned after the success of the movie, which was seen as a success despite being absolute garbage. But that wasn't unfounded because it did net the company a cool $600 million in ticket sales alone. Warner Brothers wanted to get the Suicide Squad game right, so they turned to Rocksteady, which was seen as the company's most successful and reliable game studio after their mostly successful run of Batman Arkham games. Which, Captain, you've played all of those, right?
All but Origins. Yeah.
And of the, what, there are 4 or 5 of them? How many of them are good versus how many are mid?
They're all, I mean, it depends on who you ask. I generally enjoy all of them. Origins has some middling points, but also that one wasn't Rocksteady, and people still enjoy it. It's just
Well, and Michael Q says not mostly successful. All main titles
Yeah.
were very successful. So we can see why Rocksteady are the people for the job of making a Suicide Squad game. So Rocksteady then threw out their current project, a multiplayer puzzle game by the name of Stones, and pivoted to Suicide Squad. Now, keep in mind, this happened around the end of 2016, so the initial release window for the Suicide Squad game was slated for 2019 to 2020. However, with the gift of hindsight, we can tell that that is not what happened. And that is because Suicide Squad was troubled almost from the start, when corporate meddling turned the game towards the live service model. We've talked a little bit about live service games before, games like Destiny and Warframe. This model is appealing to studio execs who see the potential for profit long after the game's release, as players are made to purchase expansion after expansion into the future and potentially forever. So, once again, the siren song of live service profits was to batter another studio's ship upon its rocks. And that's because Rocksteady had no idea how to build a live service game. Red, you've played a lot of live service games. You used to be an avid Destiny 2. Now you're an avid Warframe player. What are some of the core elements of live service and how those games function?
I mean, you're gonna need actually good replayability. You're gonna need mechanics that feel fun to do. You're gonna need a expansive actual system to interact with for empowering your character, for instance. Uh, and honestly, a lot of the better live service games have some laid back things you can do too.
Yeah, so you're not always, I guess, having to grind super hard. That makes sense. Like you can chill in the game, you can play it in a more difficult way. Yeah, so you can spend a lot of time with it, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, and cool microtransactions.
and awesome microtransactions, everyone's favorite part. But the order came down from the top, and Rocksteady's execs really they tried to embrace the new direction. But that meant that the studio had to undergo a metamorphosis in order to secure the human capital and expertise needed to make a game in a new, complicated, and costly way. Roughly 90 employees were added to the company's growing team, and it grew its team from about 160 to more than 250. Um, and this was too many people for Rocksteady management to keep up with, but also far fewer than the amount required to make a AAA live service game and make it right. Captain, have you ever been in a situation like this where you're being asked to do something that is both it's monumentally stupid that you have this many people working on something and also monumentally stupid that you don't have more?
Um, yeah, I'd say so. Um, I can't get into the hard details on it,
Sure.
but
NDAs and all that.
my first job, I suffered bad burnout because we just needed more people and we weren't getting them. And so things would get backed up and we're catching blame for it, even though it's a human resource issue.
And I know you've
Can't,
told me before about projects you've been on where things that you've done are under review and you need the reviewer to finish with them so you can move forward. And then
yeah, that's
blame is falling at your feet because they haven't reviewed your product yet.
yeah, that was what was going on in my first position, the one I was just referenced.
So that's pretty much exactly what was happening at Rocksteady. And this is where things started to get really messy. So there is a particularly evident mismanagement in the style of Sefton Hill, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm talking shit about this guy. He seems like a fine dude. He is a dev and he's a perfectionist and he's not used to working with such a big team. So Hill is a co-founder of Rocksteady, and he seems to be one of those guys who doesn't really understand the limits of his own genius. He's a perfectionist and is undoubtedly responsible for some of the successes seen in the Arkham titles. But his insistence on signing off on every aspect of Suicide Squad, along with pitching new, wild ideas deep into development, became troublesome.
Oh, feature creep's always the worst.
And additionally, while he was full of ideas, he hadn't spent a lot of time playing live service games. This led to an expertise gap that showed in development and was reflected in the final product. Blind alleys and shifting visions kept the game getting pushed further and further back and started to seriously damage morale at Rocksteady.
So, if I can interject here, this is a common problem in the industry. This also came up during Cyberpunk's development. Uh, they had talked about how sometimes you'd have higher ups go out for the weekend and come back, and they just played a new title, and they want to start emulating features it has. Just keep doing it over and over, and it keeps changing the game. The things keep getting scrapped, and new things that don't really fit. You're being told to implement this, and yeah,
And this is
it's
something I left out of my
big
script that
problem.
was in the article, and that is that they kept thinking, oh, the release window's right around the corner. We have got to get these bug fixes done. We have to make sure that the game is playable. But they spent so much time doing that they weren't working on these longer term feature implementation things, and they weren't anticipating the release date to get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So then they had to undo the work they had already done, and it just sounded like a shit show, man.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a
But
classic.
Red, to your point from earlier about what makes live service games work, that is what the team struggled with ultimately, was making Suicide Squad fun. And as anyone who has spent a lot of time with a live service game knows, replayability and repetition are core to the experience. You're often doing the same activities over and over, be they missions, dungeons, public events, raids, etc. That's just in Destiny terms.
We
And that
didn't ask
replay
for it, but we've stepped into a war with the cabal.
that replay has to feel fun, and maybe not as fun as your first run, but still fun. And Rocksteady really only had experience in making single-player games with limited replay value. And then there's the issue of guns. If you're going to ask people to grind, you have to have something for them to grind for. And that something in this case is guns. So the decision to make superheroes primarily resort to shooting things instead of using their superpowers raised eyebrows internally, and devs were questioning the product's viability. And I think that was really one of the main things that hit right out of that first trailer is everyone said, why the hell is Captain Boomerang shooting people?
Why is King Shark shooting people?
Right.
God, should have been a melee-based character primarily.
Guns only made sense for Will Smith.
You know what? Harley, maybe. Harley could have been a mix. She could have had a melee gun mix. She could have been the Mario.
Yes, Mario, known for using both the melee
What I mean is
and
like
guns.
the well-rounded character. I'm using.
Yeah, no, I'm purposefully misunderstanding you for fun.
Okay. Well, I also need to clarify. Anyone
Yeah.
What I'm fucking talking about. Yeah, she could have been the all-around.
I personally think that they messed up in not giving Harley Quinn an alternate costume that's just Cookie Monster pajamas. Because to me, she so accurately encapsulates the Cookie Monster pajama girl. But that's neither here nor there. So, while the devs...
Go ahead.
No, we can sit on that. But what are you confused about?
I'm not aware of the Cookie Monster pajamas girl archetype.
Think of any girl that grew up in our hometown and fights people. That's Cookie Monster's pajama. What? Cookie Monster pajamas girl. Anyways, while the devs could see the rapids transforming into a waterfall in front of them, executives were caught off guard. They were busy admiring the beauty of the water, leading them to their doom. Executives reviewing the game often praised Rocksteady's work, particularly the game's beautiful graphics. They told Rocksteady that they expected Suicide Squad to turn into a billion-dollar franchise. For their part, Rocksteady founders Jamie Walker and Sefton Hill seemingly anticipated the fall, abandoning ship and founding 100 Star Games. They reportedly told their fellow defectors in job interviews that the new studio would be free from corporate meddling. After their departure in 2022, the game was showed off, then further delayed, ultimately culminating in the public embarrassment and $200 million loss that is Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League.
It's a bummer. It really sucks. I always took a wait and see approach with it. The trailers never inspired enough confidence. There's always this feeling of, why are they all using guns? Learning it was a live service model definitely made it worse. Like, I don't know. The whole thing bums me out. I enjoy Rocksteady games. And yeah, I really wanted it to live up to that pedigree. I kind of anticipated it would get a lot of, or was getting a lot of meddling due to its Warner Brothers publishing, and they meddle. So I don't know. Bums me out overall.
They added Joker, and normally games like Destiny 2 and Warframe have these narrative lead ups, these near unique or reused areas or mechanics done with a new twist for unlocking new stuff in games. Joker was just thrown in the game, and you basically replay a story mission and get him. From what I remember hearing, it was implemented very poorly. They really, and I don't mean this to diss them, but they don't know how to make a live service game.
No one there had any idea. And even though they tried to onboard people that might have had a better idea of how to do it, none of the higher ups did. And I think that is really what shot them. Is that people like Hill. I don't want to single him out as the reason the game sucks. I don't think that's fair. But I think that it was him and people like him that just didn't know what a live service game was and just kind of hoped that it would come together. The article talked a lot about this toxic positivity that was going on at the studio, where everyone kind of knowing that the game sucked was like, yeah, it's fine though, because it's gonna pull together here at the end, just like all the Arkham games did. And it reminded me a lot of the BioWare problem.
There are games that have pulled through at the very end, but I also think that I think it was bad for the industry as a whole that there are successes there that necessary or maybe shouldn't have been, because then that made other people go, oh yeah, we can do it too.
Yep, and that's what I meant by that line about the sirens call bashing the ship on the rocks, right? Like, everyone sees the profits of the successful ones, and they're like, we can make Anthem, it'll work. We just have to believe in ourselves. And then they waste a bunch of money and ruin a bunch of goodwill.
I can tell you this. There are very good odds that toxic positivity wasn't necessarily shared between a lot of the lower developers.
No, it seemed like everyone kind of lower down on the rungs knew that it was going to be a shit show. And the toxic positivity was mostly between leadership and execs from WB. But yeah, I wanted to talk about that because I just feel like it really exemplifies a lot of the things we talk about on the show pretty often.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
a far more common story than it should be. Like I said, the Cyberpunk had a very similar trajectory. Well, not excluding the live service portion, but in terms
Yeah.
of like feature creep and
Oh yeah, it is very hard. There's so few games with turnaround success stories for fixing a bad live service game. The only one that comes to mind is hit MMO Final Fantasy 14. But
Yeah.
Cyberpunk had an advantage by being a single player game. You don't have to worry about weird laws around transactions and ownership and
Well, and a live
connections.
service game has to mesh really well. All of its components have to work with each other really well. And you can't really skate by with just part of it being good. It all needs to be good because it's demanding a lot of your time, right? Like, I think that's the thing is that if I'm playing a single player game, I can play a shitty mission and I can say, well, that's fine. It didn't take me very long anyway. But a shitty mission in a live service game, you're going to be replaying that piece of shit over and over again.
Mhm.
But let's move to an update. Red, you've got an update for us. How about you tell us about it?
Yeah, we're going to return to the Vimm's Lair story. For those who didn't listen, we covered a story previously where ROM hosting website Vimm's Lair received takedown notices, and the online consensus was that it could be trolls, it could be bad lawyers, or it has, as you Tiny had mentioned, crude lawyer AI. And this has been the determination that Vimm themselves have came to in an update on their own website. The website sending these notices, mm-nintendo.com, uses opsecsecurity.com as their email service. And one of the services that they provide is an AI designed to protect online brands. That AI uses text based detection. This would explain the things that stood out, like any titles with Mario in the name, even when the word Mario was a part of the word. I want to say it was like either a Game Boy Advance or a Game Boy Color game with Marionette in the title. That was in the notice, but that's not a Nintendo owned game. Vim also received takedown notices from the OPSEC security asking for games removed on behalf of Sega and Entertainment Software Association. I don't know what games ESA owns, but that is the group that used to host the now deceased E3.
Interesting. I just didn't know that E3 ever, that those people ever published a game.
I'm not. There could have been something else, but I'm not really sure what was in the notice itself.
Yeah.
He just mentions it. But at the point in time, Vim has complied with the request and removed all requested downloads and images. Interestingly, at first the request was just about images, box scans, and disk scans and title screens. It was only later when a confirmed person, reviewed the request and corrected grammar and clarified the email that Vim was then asked to remove the downloads of these ROMs. And unfortunately, I expect Vim to only receive more notices now that his website is in the crosshairs for poking the bear, so to speak. Big dude, do you have any serious non-bombastic comment about this whole situation?
I was right,
Well,
fuckers!
he blew out his audio.
I was right, fuckers. Um, yeah, no, I mean, I didn't actually catch the AI part of it, but that doesn't surprise me. I just kind of figured that it was Nintendo contracting out through another law firm to enforce their intellectual property, something that's pretty common that I've dealt with in practice before. So I'm happy that I called that one correctly, and that's what you can expect here on Couch Dimension. 100% success rate. We're always right about everything. And if we say something, you can take it as law. You can tell all your friends. You can be super obnoxious. And then when it turns out to be true, you get to look really smart. You look smart through us. Sorry, I'm done with the elevator pitch for the show, but this is just a win. We're taking it, boys. Not a win for Vims, though. That sucks.
Yeah. And just due to the way that a lot of people just kept commenting on his website, and it may have only fed him that hey, this looks like a troll. We all think this is a troll. This is a troll. He's like, maybe it's a troll. Maybe I'll just wait and see what happens. And when when they saw that it was still on his website, they were just like, okay, we're gonna take more action. So now I imagine it's under the microscope.
Yeah, and the way that these things work, like the fact that they're incorporating AI doesn't surprise me because previously what they would do is just, as best I could tell, reverse image search. certain things. At least that's the instance I dealt with. Basically, we represented this client who had a picture on their website. That picture was taken from the AP. The AP reached out, or not the AP, the AP's lawyers, their hired guns, reached out and said, hey, please take the picture down and pay us some money. We said, we'll take the picture down. We're not paying you a damn cent. And then we did take the picture down, but they emailed us again and they were like, hey, no, the picture is still hosted here. But it was somewhere in the back end of the website. We couldn't access it. And the only way I figured you could access it was through a reverse Google search. So these kind of IP lawyers are always looking for cheap and easy ways to just scan the entire internet and then send out a bunch of shit.
You know what I enjoy most though is that genuinely, like I was looking it up now, or just doing a quick check. All they had to ever really do is like search Nintendo ROMs, Nintendo emulators, Nintendo ISOs. It wasn't a hidden site. It's weird that it went like under the radar when it wasn't really like hidden.
The thing is, lawyers cost a lot and we charge per hour, right?
Mhm.
So it's a matter of, do you want to sit someone down at a desk and pay them hourly to scour the internet? Or you're probably more likely to be cool with them contracting with them if they're using an automated process, saves you billables, and yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's just weird when it's like no one at Nintendo ever. Which maybe it was they just didn't want to start that fight. But also the idea of, well, everyone says this is a troll, so I'll just wait and see. I would say when it comes to legal matters like that, you might want to do some follow up on your own.
Which to that point, just to your point about the thing you just said, that totally left my brain. Oh yeah, about maybe Nintendo didn't want to pick that fight. Yeah, if you're in-house, you're more likely to be discerning with this kind of thing. When you bring in a hired gun like that, they're just going by bulk. They want as many takedowns as they can get.
Oh yeah, they're treating it like a bounty system.
That's exactly what it is, because they're getting paid per notice.
Wild, wild west.
Wiki wild.
I just love the idea of a wait and see approach to getting a cease and desist.
Well, any damsel that's in distress is gonna be out of that dress when she sees Summer Games Fest. Captain, we're doing a Summer Games Fest thing this Friday. We're gonna watch all the trailers, just like we did with the Sony event. We're gonna watch all the trailers at 1 p.m. CDT. So just wanted to throw that out there before this bit. But Captain, you want to tell us a little bit about Summer Games Fest and about its impact on the industry at large?
My hand hasn't left my face since that train.
That's what I'm here for, boys.
So I want to talk about Esquire put out an article about Summer Game Fest right before it dropped, titled wait, double check. I'll make sure I say it right. Is Summer Game Fest the best thing to happen to gaming or the worst? Which I think is insanely hyperbolic. Because suddenly Jeff Keighley's Junior Showcase is one of the industry's most important events. Whether or not it's a positive force in gaming depends on who you ask and how much money they have. I did want to get out of the way up top. This article's sometimes, I think, inappropriately intense about Summer Game Fest.
Yeah, it's almost like they wanted people to click on it.
I know, but damn.
No, I'm not saying that in defense. I'm just, I think that's why.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Have you seen our thumbnails?
Our thumbnails are perfect. So get into it. Article is trying to dig in a little bit to how Summer Game Fest kind of has risen to prominence in the last few years. It does point out, like back in 2020, during lockdown, it was basically just a live stream from Jeff Keighley's house. In For it to become what it is now in like 4 years is kind of insane. Uh, but with that rise to prominence, you start having questions as to how the inner workings of it work. And to as they to quote the article, quoting an industry insider, Jeff Keighley's a black hole of information. Actually, he keeps a lot of it close to the chest or vest.
Any damsel
He
that's in distress.
He's close to Jeff Keighley's chest.
Be out of that dress when she sees Jeff Keighley's chest. I'm sorry that I'm wild, wild westifying your your story here. Please continue.
I don't know what to. Now I'm gonna watch myself. I have to watch out and not give you an opening to do another one. So the large theme of the article is that it actually cost a massive amount of money to get a trailer at Summer Game Fest. To quote the exact numbers from the article, to get a trailer in the main show this year cost $250,000 for 1 minute, $350,000 for 1.5 minutes, $450,000 for 2 minutes, and $550,000 for 2.5 minutes. It's kind of nuts, but it does make sense when you consider the article does bring up this is getting more viewers than the Academy Awards, and video game industry is a massive moneymaker these. So, and this is according to other insiders, quote in the article, it's actually really good for your game's marketing to get a trailer during. However, this has brought up concerns from different people in the industry that they're not doing enough to highlight indie games. And opinions vary on that. There is an event. I'll get into that in a second, but there is an event they have called Play Days. It's a 3-day event, and it's based more around like having hands-on experiences. And they do kind of have more indie stuff there, but to once again some price points, a hands-on pod or a full hands-on pod called that's $150,000. A meeting cabana is 50,000 this year. So it is still really pricey. But it's not like indies are absent from the overall event. It's just that it's cost prohibitive.
Yeah, can I pitch in on
And
that?
huh?
Yeah, I was saying, can I pitch in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Michael Q said in chat, I don't know if it'll be covered, but Jeff said that smaller game appearance fees are very low to non-existent. And I don't know how true that is, but I just figured we should read that comment.
So
But I will say, I saw Gene Park talking about this on Twitter, and he was pointing out that these spots are not inconsistent with other nationally syndicated programs. I mean, he said that it's actually pretty cheap when you look at other large events like that, and that it's kind of akin to, I think he said it was roughly the same price as a full page New York Times ad, right? So I don't know.
So
I see that it's expensive, but I also kind of see where that makes sense.
well, yeah, no, I should speed up so we can get to. I actually want to discuss this a bit. But Greg Miller of founder of Kind of Funny, I believe he's or co-founder. And if I remember correctly, IGN alumni, had commented that like he'd weighed in a bit on it, saying like, yeah, Keeley could do better on this, but at the same time, he's saying he does a decent job. He could do better, but he also brought up, like, at what point is he just projecting? He doesn't want to cross the line of like projecting what he would make the show be onto Jeff, because that is not his show. And at the end of the day, he still gives lip service to them. It should also be said that one of the things that came up from some insiders is that it's actually kind of tough as a journalist. Like, they're not the clearest on how to get credentials to attend the event as a journalist. And I would not be surprised if maybe it is also difficult to get in, like, to understand the avenues to go through to get your trailer promoted. But a lot of indies may not have attempted to do so just because, like, the low applications might just be, well, how much it costs. So, but the last thing I wanted to get to here is that there was some criticism of last year. There were a ton of layoffs, and Keeley didn't really mention it, which did bring a lot of criticism toward. And this year, like, a crux of the article is speculating on will he mention it this year, which he has. But there's another issue of, like, some people quote in the article say or bring up that, well, Keeley doesn't necessarily have to speak on these things, but he could let developers. An example of that was there was an open letter from the Future Class program, or Keeley's Future Class program, that highlights up and coming developers. They had an open letter where they wanted to speak out in support of Gaza, and that didn't make it to the stage last year. And I don't know. I don't know how much, like, I can on
Everyone
one
on the
hand.
podcast starts sweating profusely. Just kidding. We're pro Palestine over here.
No, we're pro Palestine, 100%.
I can't speak
No, I
for
have
it, but I am.
You can.
Cool.
No,
Well,
it's just
couch dimension, line drawn in the sand.
I can see when you're putting on a show, like, asking where, like, on one hand, I think that we should speak up about these things whenever possible, but I can also see, like, you're putting on a big show and you had to ask a question of, do we put this in here or not? Does this serve the show? I don't know. It's difficult.
Yeah,
Or
I
at the
mean
very least, I'd say it's an unenviable position to be in. And if there's anything, the last part I'll bring from the article is just Greg Miller saying that, very least, Jeff Keighley apparently takes feedback exceptionally seriously. He reads a ton of the comments. He is trying to do the best he can with it, according to Greg Miller, who Greg is a fairly respected uh, individual in the industry, so I'm willing to take his word for it on that. It seems like a lot to manage. I guess what I want to pivot to is asking y'all, how y'all feel about Summer Game Fest? Because overall, like, the problems that we're discussing do, like, yeah, they exist, but I don't think they're specific to Summer Game Fest necessarily. Like, in big industry events or other things happen all the time, and there's always debate over how much we should, like, talking about problems in the industry, or discussion of, like, humanitarian issues and things.
yeah, I mean,
So
okay. So it's it's going to be pay to play, right? Like that's just the
Yeah.
nature of this kind of thing. And then, like, do you know how many indie games there are? Do you know how many games get put onto Steam every single day? If you were to open this up to a more, uh, egalitarian approach, I mean, it would just be you'll be flooded with content, and content
And
that maybe not a lot of people care about sometimes. No offense to indie creators, I love your stuff. I play a lot of indie games, but I do see where if you're putting together an industry showcase, a lot of those aren't going to make the cut.
yeah, no, it's kind of my outlook on a lot of the stuff when it comes to indies, especially because like it does seem like they're trying to do a better job. Um, and I don't know, these things do take time. I don't think anyone's wrong for bringing it up necessarily. Um, it's I think unfortunately due to the capitalism, there are certain struggles you have when making an event like this that interfaces with the huge corporate entities that makes it a difficult uh a difficult problem or issue to balance. Like how to put it.
If I
You
could
don't want to make people not want to work with you, but also you do want to occasionally maybe speak truth to power. And that can be I don't know. I wonder sometimes with with issues like this, like he is a massive voice in the industry, and I do think like it does come with responsibility. But there are times where I do sometimes wonder, like, are we asking too much of different events and people and events, and are we putting undue pressure on people for things that just may have not crossed their mind, or at the very least, like didn't feel I don't know.
Red, I think you had
Like,
a point.
yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
floundering. I'm
Like a lot of this, it's the Summer Games Fest success hinges a lot on just how not just charismatic, but with his fingers on the pulse of the gaming industry, Jeff Keighley has. If he was any less charismatic or any more off base, any off base, really, not saying he is, but if he was any off base with what gaming industry and gamers are looking at nowadays, it wouldn't be as successful as a show because he is the show right now, if we can
Yeah,
be honest. And that is a concern I've been having too, Captain, is like what's gonna happen to Jeff? What's gonna happen to these shows? Presumably you would just have somebody else. And of course that's
yeah.
a vacuum to fill, but if Jeff is is suddenly off base, or if something happens and he's just nowhere near as charismatic next year, I mean, are people going to start counting him out? And like Michael Q has been saying in chat, a lot of getting your thing on the game show is just talking to Jeff Keighley. Uh, the indie games specifically, a lot of them are just either him knowing your game or you sending him your game. That's kind of what he explicitly said during the show.
I think what the reason I was floundering a bit earlier, it's not lack of preparation. It's just an amount of like I've been struggling with this question in other memes too, but like in preparation for this, I still don't really know where I land in terms of like, if there's a humanitarian crisis, I don't want to ignore it. But I also sometimes wonder like how much should we condemn when someone decides like, well, that's not really in the scope of what we're trying to do here. And I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I don't think people are necessarily wrong to be upset. I also don't know if we should really be coming down that hard on Jeff for like maybe not wanting to get into that at Summer Game Fest. and I'm curious as to where you two land, or if you're in a similar place as me. As like, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can't begrudge Jeff for making any of the choices that he has made in that regard, because you're right. I mean, it's a huge sort of trade off. And is this the right place? Is this the right time? I know that I personally like to think that I would say something, but that is what is right for me and what I feel is right for
Yeah, like,
me. And I can't push my views about the world onto Jeff Keighley. I have tried.
but yeah, overall, my thoughts on it. I actually, right now, enjoy Summer Game Fest. I think it's fine. I think it's a lot better than like E3. I I don't know. I don't have necessarily the same issues as or I don't have a lot of problems with it. I don't know about y'all.
Oh no, I don't have problems with the show. It's really just I worry about the future of it since it's all on Jeff Keighley's shoulders.
Yeah, he is one man that is honestly doing a lot for the industry. Um, but how about we move into our next story? Red, I think you have something to tell us about Obsidian.
Absolutely. So Obsidian, Chris Tapsell from Eurogamer recently sat down with Obsidian game director Harry Patel and art director Matt Hansen after the Avowed Xbox showcase to discuss the game and their position within Microsoft. To briefly cover what they talked about the game, it's going to be the normal stuff with games like these. It's going to have dialogue choices based on your class options, and in this case, traditional class options like fighter, mage, thief, rogue. While not mold breaking, they do confirm you'll be able to mix and match these dialogue choices as you see fit, and that even skills and abilities will affect dialogue as well. A powerful attack could be a narrative choice in dialogue, or you just want to have the option to throw a big fireball in combat. But they seem to imply that narratively, an option would be you have big fireball spell. You could threaten with that spell in dialogue.
That's
And
awesome.
Matt Hansen confirms the game is going through its polishing phases. But the real meat for this story, dear listener, is how the team is dealing with the closures Microsoft has done to their own teams, award winning teams like Arcane Austin. While they delivered a poorly received game in Redfall, they did design Prey and worked on the production of the first Dishonored. And Tango Gameworks, who recently made the breakout hit Hi Fi Rush and made the popular Evil Within games. This leads to Tapcell basically asking the two if name and accomplishment aren't security, can a Microsoft studio feel safe in experimenting and trying new things? Patel first says a little prayer for the dearly terminated, hoping they land on their feet because the industry is better with them in it. She then goes on to state that she does not believe in living in fear, but she feels a strong sense of security in Obsidian, with Hansen following up that the situation is often more nuanced than taking a risk and succeeding or not, but that he is also not afraid. Patel goes on to mention that Microsoft leadership and Xbox leadership are supportive of what they do and very communicative with them. Uh, Captain, as someone who relates to developers and their struggles, would you feel secure in their shoes?
I okay. I wouldn't feel secure, but it wouldn't be related to experiment. Um, because I think they're aware of what we've already covered, which is experimenting, taking risk, anything like that. That's not what got those studios closed. And I wouldn't feel secure, but I think it would generally just be because of the general state of things at Microsoft, where, yeah, you can get cut due to convenience, for the company, more so than like, what if your game doesn't perform? Um, I I kind of I think when they say they're not about or they're not going to live in fear or they're developing in spite of it, like I think that's putting a brave face on it and doing some PR work. Because at the end of the day, what else are they gonna do? You're gonna end up developing your game, and whether you're afraid or not.
Yeah,
They
to
don't
me,
really have a choice otherwise.
yeah, to me, it sounds a lot like compartmentalizing the whole issue. Since, I mean, you make a bad game, you get let go. You make a great game, you get let go. It's like, well, hell, we'll just do what we want to do, I guess, and just be
I
scared anyway.
I often think of life in general like the game Mountain Blade 2 War Banner. In Mountain Blade 2 War Banner, I think that's the name of that one. Mountain Blade 2. You know what I'm talking about. There are sieges where you're laying siege to a castle, and the castle can fire catapults and ballistas and all kinds of, weapons at you. And there's no way to dodge these. Your character either gets crushed by a giant rock or he doesn't. But either way, you must continue marching to the castle gates. And that is how I feel about a lot of things, including this. It's like,
It's an
yeah,
active war zone.
yes, at any time, you could get completely fucked up and destroyed. But what else can you do, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's if
Uh,
your card is drawn by the powers that be, you're fucked, buddy.
Plus, like, yeah, it's the we don't want or we're not gonna live in fear thing is it also speaks to like, well, I mean, anyone who didn't want to continue developing might already be in the have jumped ship or in the process of doing so. So, you know, those who remain in a lot of ways are the ones who have decided, yeah, I guess we'll just keep going.
Oh, you boy, you boys hear the
Huh?
sound of that?
Oh
It's the
no.
rustling, and by rustling, I mean developers crying and being uncertain about their financial futures. Yeah, it's the Layoff Roundup. So recently, we've been seeing a lot more layoffs. So rather than waste time every single show telling you about whatever studio laid people off, I have decided to condense it all here. These stories are important and they are serious despite my joking tone. So we do want to tell them, but typically, if we can't tie layoffs to a larger trend or story, then they just kind of become one offs. So saddle up, cowpokes, and get depressed because Behavior Interactive, developer of Dead by Daylight, is laying off 95 developers. Microsoft, Azure for operators and mixed reality orgs laid off 1,000 employees. And Avalanche, makers of Just Cause 2, closed a studio and laid off 50 employees.
Wow, wow. One of those three was a bigger number than the other ones.
Yeah, but it's also like, I mean, I think I put it in here because mixed reality is, I guess, game adjacent. But yeah, no, who would have thought when the metaverse bubble collapses that a bunch of people will get fired? It's almost like the same thing's going to happen with AI.
We can hope.
Wait, hold on.
Well, people losing a job bad. Let me stand in front of my speeding train real quick. People lose jobs.
You have
I'll tie myself down to the train tracks for this Wild West bit.
No, I totally understand your meaning, though. Like, yes, people working in AI will lose their jobs. That will be sad, but hopefully the beast that is generative AI will be reined in a little bit, and people will stop making so many fucking stupid AI things.
Well, the fear for me is that it will, when that bubble does burst, a lot of people are going to get laid off who aren't working in AI because these things do tend to have.
Oh yeah, they definitely.
There's area of effect damage in play.
Oh yeah. Are you feeling the bucket of corporate swindling being passed off as macroeconomic trends yet? Well, sit down, feller, and let me tell you a story about Roll 7 and Intercept Games.
Yeah.
This comes to us from Rebecca Valentine at IGN. Roll 7 and Intercept Games, they make Ollie Ollie World and Kerbal Space Program, respectively. Both of these studios fall under Take-Two's indie label Private Division, and they both employed around 70 people. Take-Two Interactive filed notice under Washington state law, which requires that employers give certain notices to employees facing imminent layoffs. According to the filing, 70 employees are facing the axe on June 28th. But in the face of that news, Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick told IGN that Take-Two did not shutter the studios, which sparked some confusion because, according to sources close to the matter, both studios are facing closure. So it seems that Zelnick is talking like a crossroads demon. The truth is in the fine print. The studios haven't been shuttered yet, but they will be, and that is just the tip of the iceberg for Take-Two. So,
Yeah,
yeah, we love an
Take-Two's.
honest CEO.
I don't really. Sometimes it does get to me, or not get to me, but like, I don't get the point in like, or careful wording like.
Why are you fucking lying, man? Why are you
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
lying to us? You have no reason to lie. They're
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
lose
pretty
their
much. Like, I
jobs
don't.
one way or the other.
Yeah, I genuinely don't really.
And the
I don't
shit that
get.
Take-Two was sending these journalists, they're like, we're not trying to be cute or evasive. We're just like, we just prefer to let the studios make the announcements on their own. And it's like, fuck you. You're clearly trying to obfuscate.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's he doesn't. He'd rather face the chance that nobody's going to legally call him out for saying no, we're not closing them when legally they have an lettered that they are closing them.
Right. But it turns out that these decisions are part of a broader effort by Take-Two to step away from indie games. The company is currently in discussions with to sell off Private Division, and they are discussing that with a private equity firm, presumably the same one that ruined Red Lobster. Of course, this failure of leadership and cowardice
Please,
from
Red
Zelnick.
Lobster ruined Red Lobster.
But this failure of leadership and cowardice from Zelnick doesn't serve to harm him or Take-Two at large, but the great devs that lost their jobs due to no fault of their own. For those folks, my heart goes out to you. I hope you can find gainful employment somewhere that treats you better and lets you make great games. Anyways, folks, that's all for this week. Moving along, little doggies, because we're rounding them up. Yeah!
I do agree with Michael Q. This is West Face, and you should be back.
This is kind of a Western themed
And this is in
episode,
regards
isn't
to both the voice and your Will Smith impression.
it? I was gonna say I didn't do a Will Smith impression, but he does sing the Wild Wild West song, so you're right, it was. But anyways, Captain, do you want to tell us about Halo?
Yeah. So pretty short story, not a whole lot of details yet. It we have the story comes from a report from The Verge. Um where sorry, I still get thrown on how to properly source this. I guess it's we are getting it from an article from IGN, which is getting it from a report from The Verge. And it's reported that a Halo Combat Evolved remaster is in development and being considered for a PS5 release. This is kind of notable because we already have a Halo 1 remaster. There are famously, or well, for people kind of in the know or who are into Halo, might be aware of there were some controversies around like art style decisions in the remaster. Um, but it seemed fairly well received on the whole. my question, like I said, there isn't a whole lot of meat on those bones, other than I want to ask y'all, when it comes to remasters and remakes, where do for one, where do you stand on this? Would you be interested in another remaster? I personally lean more towards, if you're gonna mess with it again, I'd prefer a proper remake. Um, where do y'all stand when it comes to like, are there games that you would be willing to get like multiple remasters?
Yeah, that's an
it-
interesting question because as time moves forward, as it is wont to do, all classic games will inevitably become outdated. And
yeah,
so, do you just have this forever? I mean, is it going to be like The Thing, for instance? So, for those of you who don't know, The Thing was originally a movie from the 1950s, remade by John Carpenter in the 1970s, the best version. And then I think it was remade again in the 90s. And then I think we're getting another remake at some point in the future, if I'm not mistaken.
I very funny to me that you bring up The Thing in regards to the idea of remasters, because I'm not sure if you're aware of the announcement of The Thing Remastered, the video game that got announced.
No kidding.
No, the
I
Thing video game is in the title's just The Thing Remastered. Did get announced
So wait, is there a
over the
Thing
past week.
video game already that is being remastered, or is the
Yeah,
game about the Thing called the
no,
Thing?
it's
Okay.
a game that I saw people saying like they loved, but it was kind of slept on. And so it's getting
Interesting. I've been saying that they should do a social deception, the Thing game, but no one's listening to me. But that's
yeah,
neither
it's
here nor there.
as Michael Q says, PC game.
Yeah, and don't get it
I
confused. Spotify killed the car thing, so don't get that mixed up in here.
also Michael Q. It wasn't a sequel. I believe that thing, 2000s thing was a prequel, which makes it even stranger.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that either.
I don't mind the idea of like, so some games I think at some point we had to draw a line and kind of do the some form of emulation that or the virtual console on the Switch or the Wii in the past, where yeah, you can just revisit these games in their original context. We don't have the time, money, or manpower to remaster all games infinitely, but I think there are some where it's I don't mind with this some a handful of games the idea of like seeing different takes on a thing over time. That's kind of neat to me, but it depends. Like Resident Evil 2 remake, I'm really glad that exists. I don't know that that needs to be touched again. Um
I do
there
think, though,
Super Mario 64 could use a facelift. I'll say
I
that.
think with
I
Halo specifically, you could remake Combat Evolved, which we should lay out for our audience if you're unclear the difference between a remaster and a remake. A remaster is the same game, but it looks prettier. A remake is you kind of take the contents of that game and you make it again, but different this time. Um, but I think Halo Combat Evolved would be perfect if you want to play with remakes in the Halo series because you could retell that story, give us some better game, because honestly, Halo Combat Evolved is pretty repetitive, and people don't have big, strong feelings about it like they do Halo 2 or 3, right? If you did a
wonder if you
remake
could
of Halo 2, they would hang you in the streets.
I wouldn't mind it honestly. I wouldn't mind a remake of one with some more maybe a slightly more in-depth plot than what we had, but also Halo 2, I like a lot of Halo 2. There are some missions that could use a facelift or a rehaul. Like brutes don't feel good to fight against for also to address Michael Q, that he was saying Super Mario 64 already had a remake on the DS. That's actually one of the reasons I chose to talk about that because they're, how to put it, I know that one exists. I think we need another. We might need a newer one, just because like that one's a lot to the DS for one. But I wouldn't mind seeing like Super Mario 64 with a truly fresh coat of paint, because that one does look better than the original. It's not that visually improved, and mechanically you could maybe play around a little bit.
Well, fellas, I think that is our time for today. I do want to remind everybody listening, 1 p.m. CDT, Summer Games Trailers Watch Party. We're not watching the whole Summer Games Fest, just the trailers, just like we did with the Sony event. We're really trying to get some content out on these events, but they decided to drop them all at the same time. So we are 3 men with lives, and we cannot get to them that quickly. So we're going to be milling out some content week by week for the big shows. And this week is going to be Summer Games Fest. Like I said, Friday, 1 p.m. CDT. And that's it for our show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. For those listening live, go ahead and hit that follow button on Twitch. For those that want to be listening live, you can catch Couch Dimension every Tuesday at 5:15 p.m. CDT. Captain, where can fans find our edited replays?
You can find us on YouTube at Tiny Big Dude for edited episodes of the show, as well as some YouTube exclusive content. If you're listening on YouTube and if you like what you've heard, please give us a like and subscribe so you can see where or when we've posted new content. That's all, Red. Tell the people about our audio only option.
You can subscribe to us on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify by searching Couch Dimension and get us on your mobile device every week. And don't forget to rate and review us so we know how we're doing. But only if you think we're doing at least a 4.5, 5-star job here. We'll be back next week with another great show because we are trapped here by a wizard. He didn't come back, thank God.
Also, congratulations, Michael Q, on your sub celebration. Woo!